All right, welcome back everyone. This is going to be module 2. This is going to be video number 4. And this one, we're going to be talking about how we can kind of navigate through the different directories in the file structure. So we've already talked about the file structure and how everything in Linux is a file, right? But what we haven't actually really dived into is that how do we go ahead and get out? Let's say I want to go ahead and get to another part of the directory. Do I have to keep constantly changing directories over and over again? Or let's just go and say that I don't know where this is. So what do I do in this case? So I don't remember where it's located at. So let me go ahead and find it. So we're going to go ahead and talk about a couple commands. And the first two we're going to talk, the main ones we're going to be focused on today. And we're going to blow this up for you just a little bit. We're going to talk about first something called the find command. And what this does, this allows us to find files and folders, okay? And we can also then filter as well. So we're going to take a look at that. And the next one we're going to look at today is going to go ahead and be another one called locate. Now we'll say that you're kind of thinking like, well, what's really the difference? Like there's find, there's locate. Well, find actually will go ahead and go through the entire structure, whereas locate uses a more of a, is quicker and it is a quick way to search. And it requires us to have a working local database. I'm going to put DB for short. And so think of this like as it's going to use an index to go ahead and kind of figure out where this file is. And that's how it's going to do that. Now, what that means is that over time, as we go ahead and add, move, change, create, delete files, we're going to have to actually update the database too. So must frequently update database. So we're going to talk about that a little bit too. But these are the two commands right here we're going to be focusing on. Now, the real thing I'm going to go ahead and kind of like I'm going to touch base on real quick is go ahead and be a review of another command we talked about a while back. This is called the which command. And remember, this command, tells us the location of where something is coming from, specifically commands, okay? So remember we talked about which, and let's do which for find, okay? And notice it comes from the user bin find. So let's say I'm looking for stuff that has to do with the word. Let's go ahead and let's just kind of like look at this. So we're going to start with location. So we remember which can go ahead and tell us where things are. That's another way we can search. But we kind of have to already know what's going on. So now next to location and locate and find, I'm going to be dealing with, well, what happens if we don't know where to look? But we kind of know what we're looking for, okay? So let's go ahead and actually do a find. And we're going to do tech help. All right, so find has a couple of different options for us. So we have the idea that we can go ahead and let me see if they give them listed here. They don't. Okay, let's go ahead and do find. Let's do a man on find. Here we go. Okay, so this is the man page here. We have this tag H, tag L, tag P, tag D. And then we can go ahead, let's go ahead and look at this. So P is to never allow follow symbolic links. We'll talk about that a little bit more, what that is. But think of it like it's a link, it's a pointer. Tag L is for following symbolic links. We have tag H, do not follow symbolic links except while processing the command line argument. And then we can go down a little bit further. And let's go, so this right here are the tag 0 levels. So you can optimize. So let's say I don't want to, like, you can tell it how far deep do you want to check in a directory. I want to go top level, first level, second level, okay? And then we also have these. So we have this idea of like positional options. We have like measures of time. So when do you want to start? What day do you want to start? Do you want to follow it? Do I warn it? And then we can use like D for depth. Okay, tag D for depth. Max depth, how far deep? What's the minimum depth? Let's say you want to go a minimum of two layers deep into a directory. Okay. We can go ahead and do other things too. We can do for plus n for greater than n, and then we also have like the ones we're going to be focusing on the most for this one are going to be ones such as, let's see, we want like tag name. What's the base of the file name? So what kind of pattern are we looking for? Okay. We also have tag type. We'll go and find that one. Oh, you can specify what path matches a certain shell pattern path. Okay. You can go. This is a lot. It's got a lot of different options. What size? How big do you want it? So C for bytes, 512 blocks, kilobytes, megabytes. So we can specify that. Okay. We can also specify the type. What type is it? Is it a file? Is it a block, a character, a directory, a regular file, a link, a socket, a door? Now let's go actually notice it says Solaris systems. That's another type of Unix system that uses a POSIX system B system. We're not going to talk about Solaris in this one. It's a little bit more unique because of the fact that mainly you're going to find that in servers and mainframes. But you can also then users. Who owns the actual file? And we'll talk about this a little more between owners and groups in module 3 and module 4. After we get done with talking about creating users and creating groups. But who owns the file? So let's go ahead and actually take a look at this. So I do want to go ahead and stress one thing, which. Let's say, for example, which, and you go ahead and you list something out. Let's say I do list. So notice it says there's no list in any of these directories, okay? Now, typically, if something isn't found, let's go ahead and do, let's say I'll go ahead and instead of spelling mount, I'm going to put mont. It says there's no mont in any of these directories. So notice it's checking these directories for that actual location. So if it doesn't actually find what you're looking for, then it won't go ahead and return what you need. So let's go ahead and look for which can filter. There's no filter and no can. Okay. So which is actually very helpful. If it doesn't find anything, it usually sometimes will tell you. If it doesn't find anything too, sometimes it'll actually return a blank. And that'll mean that there's nothing there, okay? So let's go ahead and actually work with find. So the way find works, I'm gonna go ahead and actually break this down. So find, you're gonna type in the command find, and then you're gonna provide it a location, okay? So location, so where do you want it to start? This is a starting location. Okay, and then you're going to provide it with options. So what options are we going to look for? So let's go ahead and actually take a couple options. So we're going to find, starting at the root directory, I want to find all files with the name that ends in .conf, which stands for configuration. Now notice right here that there's actually a asterisk. The asterisk is called a globbing in the Linux world. And what that means is that the asterisk represents basically this is any file. No matter what's in front, as long as it ends in .conf, I want you to return it to me. So let's go ahead and hit enter and see what happens. All right, permission denied. Why is that? Because a lot of these are anything I don't have permission to do, which is fine. If I need to, I can go ahead and type in sudo, and I can hit that. I'm going to type in my password one more time, and you can see I get different ones right here. And it's saying I have permission denied again for certain files because I don't have permissions to some of these files. Some of these files are actually specific to a specific user. And that I don't have access to. So if we were root, it would be a different story. Okay, but we're not going to do it as root right now. If I wanted to, I can switch over to root. Notice again, I'm in root as a root user. And then I can go ahead and do find and then tac name. And then I'm going to go ahead and do a asterisk.conf. So these are all the files that are available. Okay. Notice that they don't have the access denied, so I couldn't find all of them. Okay, when I was actually directly. I'm going to exit real quick, clear my screen. So let's add another one. Let's actually, I'm not going to just do, I'm going to hit the up arrow. I'm not just going to do the ones that have a name with that end in .conf. I also want the type to be a file. Okay, the type has to be a file. Oh, look at that. It reduces it down to 3 different ones. We have this one, schost.conf and studenthost.conf, okay? So we have that. Now let's go ahead and let's actually add another one. Let's say I want this to have a name, no matter what it is, .conf. I want the type to be a file. And I also want it to go ahead and be owned by the root user, okay? And that's etsyhost.conf, okay? So you can see how we can use this information to go ahead and help build out what we're looking for. So I can change this. Let's say I want this to go ahead and be, let's say I want this to, instead of this, I want it to be IP. No matter what it has, I want IP to be the first 2 letters. And then everything after that, I don't care about. So let's go ahead and get rid of everything else here. Let's see what happens. All those have, notice, IP in front. IP, IP, IP. All of them have IP in front, okay? So that's going to do the same thing. Let's go and actually make them to where now they have IP, but the type is a, let's say, a directory. So these are all directories right here that have IP, that begin with IP, okay? So, or we can change it to a file. Notice it's a lot more. Now let's actually change it to a file, and let's change it to a file that's owned by the user root. It's a lot. It's almost the same. What if we want to do size? Let's say I want the size to be plus 20K. So these are all the files. So let's review this. All of these files here that are being listed start off, are found in the root directory, okay? They start off with the name has to be beginning with IP and then ends with whatever afterward, okay? Doesn't matter. It can be just IP, IP space, IPT, IPA, IPB, doesn't matter. And those files that I want to find also have to be the type of what I'm looking for has to be a file. The user that owns that file has to be root. And then from there, I want these files that only are size that are greater than 20,000 bytes, okay? So greater than 20K. So anything that's greater than 20,000, 20,000 bytes or 20K, okay? So that's how we can use this information here. And again, we got that from the man page under find. And that's going to be all the way down here at the bottom. And it's going to be towards the bottom. We're talking about global options right there. They always return true. So we're looking at depth, process each directory's content for the directory itself. So that's how you go ahead and use the find command. Now we can actually go ahead and pair this up a little bit more. Let's say, remember, if you go ahead and scroll up, let me go ahead and come over here. Remember this right here? So I can do something nifty. I'm going to talk about this in another subsequent video, but I'm going to go ahead and start introducing it now. I can go ahead and do what's called a redirection. So I'm going to redirect, okay? And notice I put a 2 there, dev/null. Now what this does, and I'm going to talk about it more in depth in the next video, but what this does is says 2 represents the errors, the standard errors that happen. I want you to redirect them into dev null. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually do this. I'm going to go ahead and run this, but instead of it being IP, I want it to be the .conf file. Oh, what happened there? Nothing. We got back. Well, why is that? Well, because if we ran it without the sudo command, we have to remember that we got rid of this right here. We got tons of permission denied, right? Even with sudo, we got tons of permission denied. See? So when I redirected all the error messages, which this is technically considered an error message right here, it doesn't show anything. Now, what happens if I go ahead and I'm going to run sudo. So let's go ahead and do the .conf, okay? Let's see if I have access to any files. Nope, I don't have access to any files, okay? Let's go ahead and actually go back to the IP one we had before. So we do and I'm going to do redirect all these standard errors to dev/null, okay? Again, I'll go into more detail in the next video, but I'm just introducing this now just so you can get a little bit, you'll see it a little bit in what I'm asking for, okay? Cool. So these, notice at the top, remember, I used to have one that actually gave me an error message, but notice that one's gone, okay? Now that's gone. All I have is the ones that I have access to. Right, so that is the find command. Now, an even more quicker one is something called locate. And let's go ahead and look at the help menu for locate. Locate, you can see, is a lot different compared to find. It does have some of the same options and parameters or flags we can give it, but it's not as robust as the find command. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and have to update our database first. So we're going to go ahead and just type in update DB. Let's go to sudo. Okay, so we'll type in update DB. Now let's go ahead and locate. We're going to do the same thing with the .conf files. So locate any .conf files. So we have etsyhost.conf, atomichost.conf, vhost.conf, host.conf. So you can see right here, we can actually go ahead and get this information, and it returns a little bit quicker. It's not as many filters as the regular find command has, but it does give us some information. So let's go ahead and actually do the IP command. Let's see how many we get with this one. We got nothing, okay? So we may have to do sudo, nothing. So what happens if we go ahead and do sudo locate.conf. Okay, we get a little bit, we don't get a little bit more, we actually get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so we get the same. So again, we're looking at .conf. Notice it's a lot different than this one right here, where we had all this, like all this stuff that we had for IP. So we got a little bit more options, but we have less actual ways to filter. So we don't have as many, okay? Other than that, that's how we use the find command and locate command. With that being said, go ahead and move on to the next video. That'll be 2.5. And in that one, we're going to talk about a little bit more about file descriptors and go over this whole standard in, standard out, standard error that we started introducing. All right, see you on the next video.